Cześć, dobry wieczór. Nie widziałem was tu. Ja nazywam się Jacek Wandzel i poprowadzę dzisiaj rozmowę na temat YouTube'a współczesnego, konkretnie wideoeseistyki w przestrzeni internetowej, krytyce w czasach obecnych, współczesnych, o tym, czy jest sens w ogóle taką prowadzić, jak to wygląda od kuchni. Moimi gośćmi będą Daniel Netzel z Jonathan Burdett oraz Nick Fouts. Rozmowa będzie prowadzona w języku angielskim, więc za chwilkę przełączymy się już z rejestru polskiego na rejestr angielski. Hi, for those English-speaking folks, my name is Jacek Wandzel, and I'll be hosting this talk about YouTube video essays with our three guests, who you'll meet in just a second. So, welcome and enjoy the talk. And if you have any questions, we can of course answer them at the end of the show. So please type them in English, just for our convenience. And we're back with my guests. Hello guys, how are you doing?
Doing well, how are you?
Please introduce yourselves. Who the hell are you guys?
So my name is Daniel Netzel. I have a channel on YouTube called Film Radar, and I do video essays about like film and television, although I have occasionally branched out to other topics, and it's something I'm looking to experiment more with in the future as well.
My name is Jonathan Burdett. I run Films&Stuff on YouTube, very similar to Film Radar. I more cover mainstream blockbuster films, but I try to do it with a very analytical and nuanced approach.
Hi, I'm Nick Fouts, also known as Blue Shades on YouTube. I make video essays about internet memetics, internet personalities, and internet culture. Very not similar to the two other guests, but I also make video essays about video essays, so.
We're going meta, guys.
Who watches The Watchmen?
How did you guys even start on this path? Was it just a desire to rant on the internet? Like we all kind of have that desire every now and then. Do you consider this a job at this point, or is it just an extended hobby going on for a while now?
I guess at this point, I could consider it a job. It is something that's always kind of being supplemented by other freelance work. Video essays are kind of a tough business compared to the rest of YouTube, like where you can upload like a gaming video every day or something like that. But I got into it as a desire just to talk about movies. I was really inspired by another channel called Every Frame of Painting, and thought I would give a shot at it and see if I could, find some sort of way of adding my own spin to that style of video.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat of it is it's not quite a full-time job, but you're kind of mixing and matching work. I got into it mainly just out of fun at first, as a distraction almost from I think it was my studies. But it was the type of work I'm doing was blog posts and conversations and things I was already thinking about. And then as I was more pursuing a career in film, it just became another form of storytelling. And I kind of fell in love with that sort of online media, just sort of constructing a narrative by talking about something else, And it's hard to, there was no moment of, oh, it's a job, but it kind of just became that way,
I got into making video essays out of a desire to talk about something that wasn't really talked about, especially at the time when I started in 2016. There was nobody talking about meta-based internet content. And ironically, I wanted to do film video essays, and I just thought I couldn't do that as well, or it wouldn't challenge me enough. I can certainly observe film, but at the time in 2016, nobody was talking about internet memetics the way that people do now. So it was a desire to break into that field and see, kind of get on the frontier of it.
Do you guys think at this point it's aspirational, perhaps? Is it a job to aim to, or is it just something that flows from a hobby? Especially, we'll talk about it in a second, especially in the context that video essays have a certain vernacular language style at this point, in a way that other pieces of criticism not necessarily have. So do you think this is, at this point, video criticism or documentary series, etc., are something that can be even called a job? Like outside of your personal beliefs, in a more general objective manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything online creative stuff, it's very hard to say for sure, like, if it's something worth like aspiring to as a career. I think you have to start from a point of passion first, because it is just clearly something that a lot of people try and don't succeed at. And so it, especially in something like the video essay community, I think is tougher than a lot of the other online forms of content creation, because it just, like, there's so much work of research and writing and editing. And I know for myself personally, and for a lot of other video essayists, we're like a solo team. So that just makes the process take even longer. And it just makes it hard to compete with, you know, something like a vlog where someone sits down in front of a camera for 20 minutes and then they have a full video that their audience is going to love and see as just as high quality of what they're used to. So I think it's worth like trying anything that you're passionate about. But as far as a career, I think we kind of have to see what happens. There was like a video essay boom that was kind of happening a few years ago, and that sort of seemed to plateau, and it's tough to see where that's going to go in the next few years. But I think as long as people bring something unique to their own channel and continue to try and like bring evolution to the format, because as you said, there is kind of like a certain vernacular, and I don't think that was even like an intentional thing on the community or the creators. It's just kind of the way things happen. Like a certain voice sort of takes hold and people just kind of fall into that rhythm because it's what's familiar, it's what's working. But I think there's a lot of room for potential growth and in the medium of video essay, because I think it can be so many other different things. And like, it's weird that it got like so hyper focused on movies. And I think it's cool to see like how much it's being pushed into a million different directions. Like there are video essay channels about music, about video games, about memes, about the internet culture. And I love that. I love to see that kind of stuff.
As for a job, I think with regards to YouTube, but especially like any type of arts, the people that make it are the ones that realize that that's more than just a job to them, and that like you have to be comfortable with it not being a job until it becomes a job. You're doing it because you just live and breathe this stuff, because you know this is just the way you think. This is what, you know, someone doesn't pick up a guitar because they want to play a giant show. They just want to play those tunes. And eventually you get there. You have to love playing the tunes first. And that's sort of how I view all this YouTube stuff. Like someone who makes vlogs or someone who makes certain kind of content, they do it because they just naturally like doing that stuff. But as for like the medium, like I find it very interesting because the video essay, like in regards to like the nerd writer and everframe painting format, that was a format for sure of like that 8 to 10 minute. I feel like that's sort of evolved. I have found more like, whereas I used to do 6 to 8 minute videos, I'm doing 20 to 30 minute videos, and they take so much more time. But how like even myself, how I sort of what I was making before, whatever genre I was in before, it's not really recognizable to me anymore. And I like how it's branched off. It's not like this format. It's more, I see people who are turned it to more review type content, or people who've done like one of my buddies, High Top Films. They're almost like these in-depth personal documentaries, so to speak, or what Patrick Williams has been doing, turning it into like a talk show format. So it's gotten more creative. It's gotten more expressive, in my opinion, but it's not that sort of streamlined format that it was 4 years ago.
Yeah. To add on to that, certainly the facets of video essays have branched off into other genres. And in terms of the expressiveness of it, we've seen it just explode. It's no longer that stricter 8-minute every frame of painting like format, piece by piece. What is this? What is this? It's become much more personal, which I think is great. As in terms of a job or an occupation, I kind of went into YouTube with that mentality and failed. Because I'm like, all right, I gotta make something that's gonna make me money, and I realized that's a terrible idea. And then when I got into like the more personal aspects of what I do, I started to really love making video essays out of a necessity to communicate my opinions, and the evolution of video essays and why it's maybe worth studying more, especially on the internet, is that the more the format evolves, the more of the people we see, not the content. With film, like they said, there's hyperfixations on film. That's because the content's already there to be analyzed. There's a storytelling aspect in the editing of the video essays themselves about the films. When it branches out to other mediums, like what I do, it becomes much more challenging to make it almost objective, I suppose. So you have to like be able to show that subjective side of yourself rather than analyze a piece or make it even less academic. And I think there's a question later that we'll get into about that specifically, but yeah.
So we've called the video essay a bunch of names, from medium to just a thing you do, a hobby, to an art form, and we started talking about genres. Do you think at this point there is enough history of the medium, or whatever you want to call it really, to prepare some sort of theory for the entire medium? Do we have subgenres, etc., in a way that is consolidated in a way that is clear enough that you could speak analytically about the different pieces of language, styles, etc.? Because at this point, we've had so much stuff. Like you've mentioned every frame in painting, which was kind of the a sort of benchmark for how to do this thing, etc. We had recently a certain breakthrough into the mainstream through Lindsay Ellis' documentary series, essentially, like on The Hobbit, on the production of The Hobbit, and what failed, which kind of stretches the limits of what we call a video essay or a piece of criticism into more of a documentary vibe. Do you think at this point we have gone far enough to sort of identify these different genres, styles, movements, etc. within it?
I think it's interesting to see the way it's evolved, and I think we're getting closer to like kind of figuring out what a video essay means. At least that's my interpretation. Like I think there are these different subgenres that keep kind of growing in their own direction. And because like I think at the start, pretty much video essay just meant any video that wasn't like a straight up review of art. But it got to a point where it was like any sort of video about a movie was inherently considered a video essay. But then people were having a hard time. Like if someone made a political video, like some people didn't want to call it a video essay because they just had so associated video essays with movies and TV. But I think video essay, like pretty boilerplate, just means what it sounds like. Like it's a video essay, and that can be whatever that person wants it to be, because every person has their own unique voice when writing. And so the actual essay portion of it is going to be just whoever that author is, you know, and that's going to come through. And then whoever has a, you know, like the different vision for editing and all the different stuff that you can do there with, you know, Illustrator and Photoshop and After Effects and everything. Like you can bring a whole different type of personality to your videos. And like you have people like, you know, like Every Frame in Painting, but then you have someone like Nikki Jakey, who is another video essayist who makes like really clever, funny videos that probably no one would have envisioned like 2-3 years ago. But I think it's a really cool evolution of what like the video essay is. And then there is like with Lindsay Ellis, what I think is interesting, it's kind of seeing like what a team and a budget can do. Because she has so much support on Patreon and like sponsorships and everything, that, you know, she can fly to New Zealand and meet production designers that worked on The Hobbit, which is just not an opportunity that like most video essayists are going to have. But so it's cool to see like the different levels of what people are aspiring to create within that medium, and to see where it goes.
I absolutely believe we can document it. I think it's gotten to a point where it's not just that it's matured, it's that there have obviously been imitators, there are people who've reacted to the content, who've criticized the content. I think there's a language, there's a sort of a, you know, it would be super easy to make a parody about it. And that's what I find fascinating about it, is that like it's no longer about I wouldn't say it's not about the content anymore, but like it's about how you express yourself through it now. It's about how you know, could you tell a story through a story, if that makes sense, or like there's more layers to it now. But yeah, I absolutely think you could write a book on this. That there's enough history, you could make an class about it. And I think the more you document it, there are issues with it, as someone who's worked within it, that when you've sort of put on this authoritative persona, it's very easy to convince people. So if you get things wrong or you're misrepresentative, you know, that could actually be harmful. But I find that part interesting, but that's just the evolution of the art, you know? So I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah, I absolutely think you can document it. You could academically deconstruct it and find sort of a format that may not have been obvious beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. It unfortunately falls under the observer effect as well, seeing as the more it goes on, the more it changes, and the more that we commentate on it, the more reactions to that commentating changes effectively the format. Like Daniel said, Nakey Jakey, you wouldn't necessarily call him a video essayist, but colloquially he is. He's just informal. The way that we represented and understood video essays as a definition before was the formality of it. It's in the name, video essay. It's just an adaptation of an essay, but what we consider an essay has kind of become more loose, and that's perfectly fine. And later down the line, when it becomes more academically studied, it's going to have to facilitate that change in how we examine the presentation, especially if we just take a video like Nakey Jakey's and compare it to Every Frame of Painting, and we transcribe those. They're kind of similar. There's just different wording. The structure ultimately has stayed the same. It's just about what has seeped through the cracks since Every Frame of Painting to now. And really, how we read it is, or how we read essays initially, like when just reading a piece of text, there's something we have to get out of it ourselves. We have to put in work. With video essays, it's kind of done for us in the presentation, which ultimately makes it more interesting to study about more of the pedagogical ideas of video essays and how they present information, or how you can perceive information from it because of that presentation and the person behind it, not just the straight academic text of something.
It's kind of going into the direction of language and the specifics of the medium. Do you think at this point there is a sort of written, well, not written because it hasn't been written down, but a certain acknowledged language of the modern contemporary video essay, in the sense that, because from Every Frame of Painting, we've gone into the direction where even the more serious pieces of criticism kind of have to have a bit of a looser feel, which is partially the result probably of the whole internet aspect of it, where we kind of assume inherently that if it's within the culture of YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, etc., it has to appeal to a certain demographic, so it has to be a certainly popular. But do you feel like in your work you kind of feel obliged to, okay, I need to work within a specific framework, and I have to put my language within that framework.
So I never really think about things like that, to be perfectly honest. When I look at other video essayists, I definitely notice, like, and myself included, right? Like, there are certain trends that happen. I think as you just kind of consume enough of the same sort of content, you start to sponge a lot of ways of putting phrasing together, or how, like, you start to just kind of pick up, even if you're not really aware of it. Like, I don't think I was for maybe like the first year of writing essays, how much I was unintentionally taking from structure of just how to structure an argument. Because that's kind of what a lot of these video essays boil down to, is making some sort of argument for some sort of, component, whether it's the writing or the editing or whatever. And so you kind of notice like certain techniques of, like introducing the thing and then showing good, bad examples, and kind of like there is definitely a formula. But for me, the only thing I ever really feel obliged to when writing is like the same thing that I've had from the beginning, is to never make a video about something I'm not really passionate about, because I'm going to have to consume and like live in that world for however long to make the video. So it has to be something I really, really care about. And then as far as like the actual language of it, I think what's different about, like, I think you're right that the way online entertainment has changed things, because I think video essays have existed for a really long time. They just maybe weren't seen as a pop culture thing. It was probably something that you would watch in a lecture at college or something. Yeah. But like, even you'll see like these big channels like Vox, with millions of subscribers and crew of hundreds of people, even in their video essays, they still have that very personal voice. They have the host, they have the person whose like name and face is attached to this series, like Earworm or whatever. And I think that really helps, because then it feels less like you're studying something, which most people find to be boring, and they turn it into something that's like entertainment and funny and personal and relatable. And I think that like everything we've seen from the start of YouTube is just people consistently being surprised at what people find entertaining. I think if you were to go 20 years ago and say that like a daily family vlog would be watched by millions of people, I don't think anyone would believe you. We're just so far removed from what people thought of as entertainment. And I think video essays are naturally being affected by that, as we're trying to get to more like just like relatable ways of delivering content that don't just feel super preachy and just, I don't know, like, I think there's an area where you can get like into dangerous, pretentious territory. And I think that is slowly being peeled away too. And people just want to be more themselves and be more comfortable and have more fun with it. And I think that's kind of the biggest evolution that we've been seeing in the last few years of it, for sure.
I've actually had some talks with a lot of my YouTube friends, and how, like, early on, like, of course, I think I did look to like the sort of pioneers of the genre just to figure out, okay, how do you actually structure this? And forming your first few arguments is tough, and you realize how much the structure is important. But once you've done it for years, you learn this stuff, and so I don't have to think. It's now second nature for me. But once you've kind of gone and you've established your own brand, and I think of like, even someone, I remember like Your Movie Sucks, his couple first videos were blatant ripoffs of Red Letter Media, but the more he did it, he found his own brand. And that now, once you've established your brand, actually the hardest part is like, you realize, wait, I've almost trapped myself in this bubble. And for me, constantly, I'm trying to think about how do I subvert those expectations of what my audience thinks of me and what they're getting into. And I think comedy has been good for that. Of like, I'm just naturally like to throw jokes in, like, just for fun. I like to, it's like the spice in the stew. And for me, it's like, and also like as consumers, we digest a lot of media. And before, the media we were just digesting 4 years ago is different than the media we're consuming now. And that naturally makes its way into the content you make. You are what you eat. And that's sort of like, so I watch a lot of fun videos or video game videos or reaction vids, and that sort of language will always like kind of be present in the content I make, just ever so subtly. And for me, the big evolution for like these last year or so has been like trying to actually make these narratives, not just a critique, but actually telling a story. And I've like invested in film equipment, film like, you know, gear, so that I can actually tell like something that feels cinematic, not just commenting on something cinematic. You know, that's sort of the one thing I've been always pushing for. And like for me, like at least in specific to film criticism, that's obviously not the only thing that video essays cover. But I think the one reason why they gravitate so much towards it is that when you write a review for something, or you're just a talking head, you're talking about the movie, but you're not really getting into the movie. But by using visual medium, you can actually play with the material that makes film and video interesting. And that's what I get out of this, of like manipulating the edits, manipulating the cinematic language of it all. That's what keeps me excited. And that's what's been so surprising the more I do it.
Yeah, for me personally, I adhere to somewhat of a stricter format when it comes to the language, almost to the point it stifles me. And kind of going back to just a little faster the previous question, the parodies of video essays is like the thing that helped me understand the structure of video essays more, like just digging deep into it to just take it apart and make one big parody or joke out of it. Kind of blew the doors open for me in terms of like, okay, so there's other people who do this, but my voice is much more formal in a way. And like Jonathan said, with the, I guess, expressiveness of it, it certainly, one second, it certainly feels like the language has become way looser, and there appears to be, in terms of like the casual content that is consumed, especially today, 2020. Back then, when there was that video essay boom, everybody adhered to that stricter format. But now, what sells on YouTube is the personalities. You go and click on a video, and you're there for whatever they're talking about. But later, you start to realize the person behind it is the reason you're watching. The first 5 minutes of something, or for even the first, I think the first, 10, 15 seconds, people click off, like the retention just drops after that. But it's about the personality and the voice behind it that becomes the selling point. And that's really what YouTube is about. And maybe it's a pun, but you know, YouTube's original motto was broadcast yourself. So that still plays into today, especially. And I think that motto, even despite the formality and the high production values and YouTube's promotion of larger corporate entities, it still seems to be the most popular content is this more casual, intimate side of people making videos.
So how do you feel that? I don't want to use the word influencer because I no longer feel it means anything at this point. Because everyone's an influencer at some point because they've shown up on the internet. But
Yeah.
how do you feel that relationship, that building up an audience, finding your voice, how does it impact your approach to this, to what you're doing? For example, is the gravitation towards longer video essays, towards more in-depth analysis, towards, again, longer videos, is it coming from this place where you just feel more comfortable with your voice? Is it finding it? Or is it as a bit of a scheme at this point? Maybe not scheme, but a certain pattern where you kind of start small and then you inevitably blow up your content to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more, and pouring more yourself into it.
Oh, me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Whoever wants.
the camera's done. Sure. For me, at least, we're getting longer and evolving that. Honestly, I think it's part of. I look back at my earlier videos and I think, man, I was brief. Man, I was like, I'm talking too fast. I don't go that in depth. I feel like I'm just kind of. What the approach I like doing now is taking something small and like expanding that. Whereas before, I would just do the small thing and get in it. I think there's a lot of great videos that do that. You know, if you only have 5 minutes of things to say, do the 5 minutes. But now I just naturally have more things to say, and more like the more complex, the bigger idea. I guess it's a bigger challenge, and that's intriguing. But I think just naturally, it's like it's the evolution of getting better at my craft. It's that realizing, oh, there's more to this. Whereas before, I would just cover the things of, yeah, this thing's that, and we're all good. Today, it's like, okay, wait, there's something a lot deeper here, and I want to explore that. I want to chip away at these pieces and then really get to the heart of this thing. And that only comes through practice and just more times doing it. And I think that, again, like more times for personality, more moments for, evolution. But I mean, there's some great video essays. Some of the best, I think, are short. And part of me wants to return to that, but I don't know how. I used to, do very short videos, but now I can't get a video under 10 minutes to save my soul. But I feel more comfortable doing that, like really digging apart something. And they're like creators beyond just the video. Like I think of like people like The Right Opinion who do like these 1.5 hour, 2 hour videos. And there are people like there is a demand actually for longer content. People are starving for it, and it's very hard to make. But I never do anything in terms of demand. I always do it from I want to tell this story, and this story needs to be long. Like it's it's like George R. R. Martin looking down the Song of Ice and Fire series. It's like, well, this is going to be how many books it's going to be.
Yeah, in terms of like scaling up the content, when I started, I almost sounded like a text-to-speech program. I was brief and I was blunt and I was just like, this is what it is. And that didn't really do well, obviously, until I started becoming more comfortable. And even then, in front of a camera, even right now, or when I do my videos, I am just like a dog tucking his tail between his legs sometimes. But certainly for the content that needs to be made, it's unfortunately a case of having to facilitate your content for the algorithm too. I think 2018, 2019, the general rule was it at least has to be 10 minutes to fit ad roll. And those are for people who made money off the platform more consistently. So whatever YouTube puts in the algorithm that's popular, people follow that to try and find more success in it. So making more brief videos that I like to make too. I think brief video essays and video essays 10 minutes or under, just concise and nice. And if you can structure it out well, it's more pervasive. You can retain more. When it comes to like 20-minute plus, sometimes you just find people who are frankly kind of pedantic or just way too long-winded. But that's not because of them. That's because sometimes they need it it's a necessity. They need to make those videos for a living. And most people do it well, like Lindsay Ellis. Lindsay Ellis, I think, is my main inspiration in a way. She's just really good at what she does. But there are people who obviously have made a living off the platform that need to adhere to what YouTube does and changes about their platform. And scaling that effectively, for me, it's a little hard because I stay within a format. Like I don't think I'm ever going to change, and that's much to my detriment, unfortunately. But it's still riding that line of I'm still passionate for it versus me wanting to do something that's going to be seen by more people. So that's kind of the balance I have there.
So I definitely have like a very strange relationship with the whole audience influencing the content. I go back and forth wildly between like caring way too much about what the audience is going to think and like that really getting in my head when I'm making the video. And then I'll go off in the complete other direction and make something that I'm like, I don't care if no one watches this. I just have to make this video. I really want to do it. And I never really feel comfortable in either of those. So I try to keep one foot in both and just like be cognizant of the fact that, like I do rely on this for income. So I can't have it just be the most self-indulgent thing that no one's going to watch. But also I don't want to be the guy that's just like, oh, what's the trend? This is what everybody's talking about. I have to make a video on that too. because I don't think I've ever been like relevant, so worrying about staying relevant doesn't matter. I've always felt like, you know, a little below the surface, and there's like something liberating about that though, because then you're not competing with like the trending page, and like it's just your loyal people. And I've been fortunate enough that like, I mean, I read all the comments that I get, and I have a lot of really, really, really lovely people who watch my videos, and that keeps me going, because I'll take a stab in a direction that I didn't necessarily think I was going to go in. And then there's like those core people that even if the video performs horribly and my sponsor is writing angry emails at me, you know, I know that I made those like few hundred people very happy. And I think that that keeps the motivation alive. Because I've definitely had the videos, and I think we all have, if we're honest enough to admit, we've pushed out content we're not like the most proud of because we have to hit a deadline or, you know, it happens. It's an ugly part of the thing that no one tells you about when you're like that hopeful creator. Like it's all just passion, and you're like, you want it to be, but it can't always be. You know, there is that balancing of economy and like art. But I think I had a really big learning moment way early in my my channel's history. I made a video about Kingdom of Heaven, because there's like the theatrical cut, director's cut. Director's cut is basically a completely different movie, and I wanted people to know that. Made this video, everybody was in the comments like, where's the information? You know, like you're literally just saying that there's a director's cut that's better. Why? And it took me like 2 years, but I ended up coming back and remaking that same concept, but like to do it the way that I felt like I failed the first time. Because when you get hundreds of comments telling you the same thing that you screwed up, you know, like you've got to put ego aside and like, listen, like they're probably right about something there. And, but stuff like that is definitely kind of the extent of where I keep the audience in my head, because I think I've had like a rare lucky streak for a lot of videos that did way better than they probably should have based on what was going around at the time. Like one that comes to mind is I made a video on Kung Fu Hustle that like was at such a random time. It's not like it was the 10th year anniversary or like Stephen Chow's birthday or something. Like normally people keep waiting for those like perfect nuggets to be like, this is the time to make this video. And if I do that, I drive myself crazy playing that game though. I really do. Like the last time I tried to do that was making my Game of Thrones video, and I was losing my mind because I was working so slow. And every time I checked YouTube, I saw yet another Game of Thrones is terrible video. And I'm like, no one's going to watch mine. I'm going to take like 3 months and they're going to be talking about something else by then, you know? But so I have to work in my own very just like almost self-centered, but I try not to think of it that way. Hopefully it's not, but you know, just for my own sake and sanity.
So yeah. Game of Thrones is a great lead into the next question I have. Do you think there is a certain culture of negativity, or rather excitement about negativity, particularly in criticism? Because outside of Game of Thrones, I was thinking of a YouTuber called Mother's Basement, who admitted that he started doing very well on YouTube once he finished his series on the series Sword Art Online, which he railed that series. He hated it. Like it came from a place of passion, but it was very critical, and that when his numbers started going up. Do you feel? Did you experience that once you get negative, analytical, and in depth, but still negatively? Did you feel like, yeah, this video tracks. This is my hit. Well, because I've just nailed this film or this drama or this story to the cross, essentially.
Oh man, you're choosing me first. You're gonna regret this. This lights a fire under my ass, to be honest. Yeah,
we like to do that.
Well, thank you. This question certainly will. The content and the culture of negativity, especially on YouTube, I feel is just so volatile in many ways, not just video essays, not just like criticism like Mother's Basement, the way he said like, oh, this is what tracks views, because I've experienced that too. One of my most viewed videos was about how much I hated Dorkly for a while. And oh man, I had just hundreds of thousands of 12-year-olds just tell me, and with bad spelling and grammar, like how bad I am. And I realized like that's the content I never wanted to make again, because that negativity, while the passion is pervasive enough to make people attracted to that, and they'll watch it and they're like, yeah, okay, they get riled up too. It's like the red flag, the army chasing forward. But for what I do, I always wanted to make like more positive content. But the culture of YouTube and what makes money and what makes views is negativity. And it also, it kind of soaks up like tofu, like when it absorbs flavor. And unfortunately, a lot of negative criticism is a lot of the time inaccurate, because it has to facilitate what YouTube makes popular. A lot of people make those videos because they know it'll be popular. I hate to bring back this example. I believe Jonathan brought up the right opinion. While his videos are long and pretty well presented, that's actually one of the big examples, is that there's this culture around negativity for it. It's examining like the rise and fall and the downfall of people. These are real people that they're talking about. And it breeds this culture and creates this dichotomy that ultimately will skews people's mentality, not only on content, but people in such a negative way. And I think the internet's already done this, if we're being honest, but we just jump to conclusions with passion rather than try to look at it more logically about, or even empathetically about how people perceive other people on the internet. There's a lot of children coming up on YouTube and TikTok and whatever platform that are getting massive audiences that if they slip up, there's going to be just a bunch of people with shovels digging shit on them. That's just what's going to happen. They're going to create problems for these people, and it's going to kind of cause this mental health crisis with the internet down the line. And more of a personal example, my nephew kind of experiences this, and I've witnessed it, and I almost want to make a video about it in general, because it's going to be such an issue, especially with negativity. And kind of to go back more to content, that also creates a dichotomy of what's good, what's bad, versus what is ultimately experienced. A lot of people kind of through osmosis take people's opinions online because it's a little easier to. You can watch this video and kind of get an idea of the content they're talking about and say this is bad because of this, and then they take the opinion. I've witnessed people do that in conversation. Like they'll say something almost verbatim from a content creator I've watched, and I'm like, okay, well, have you seen this movie? Have you listened to this album? Have you played this game? Like, oh no, I just watched an hour video essay. Yeah, there's a lack of experience, and people substitute that experience with like videos. Like somebody's going to think they have enough information to have an opinion about something, and with the hyper realization of content on the internet, and the keyword is content, it ultimately has to facilitate towards creating for opinions and people to just like be pervasive and be able to take those in and kind of regurgitate those. That's how the systems online work. Like you go into the comments and you're like, I agree, I disagree. A lot of people kind of look at like the first few words of a comment and just not really discussing it. Or they look at the ratio of a like or a dislike bar and they're like, okay, that's my opinion of it. If it has less than 90% likes, the video is bad. Or if the Rotten Tomatoes score is below yada, 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 it's bad. But like, it's never indicative of something's quality or even a person's quality. And the unfortunate part is that our experience of criticism is going to be diluted into an arbitrary dichotomy, I think.
Yeah, I actually want to tune in. As to whether negativity does well, my best performing video this year is a bad review of The Rise of Skywalker, so I think that's my answer. But I actually had I think my favorite video this year I did was on Jurassic World, and before I did that video, I was very like, I hate this movie. I just want to make this movie to show my grievances I've had for 5 years. But then when I did the research, I wasn't about these are the reasons why this movie is bad. The whole video is about were all these decisions made. The whole structure of the video is just why is it the way it is? And I rarely ever give my like firm opinion of this is why it's bad. I'm just kind of laying out what the movie actually is, what it's trying to do, where it succeeds and where I think it fails. And doing that, I had a wonderful experience with the comments. Half of them were like, wow, you made me really appreciate this movie. It's a lot smarter than I thought it was. And the other half were saying, wow, you showed how terrible that movie was. It was an osmosis test. It was a total Rorschach. Like, they were taken away. And what I liked about that was I was never telling them what to think or feel. I was just laying out the techniques used and how they can or can't be effective. Not in a judgment way, but more in a, the potential kind of way. And that's the sort of content I really am interested in. I'm really in I don't care about partisan fan base, these wars that get political. I saw the most political conversations I've had have been around Star Wars for some reason. And like, that's what I'm interested in. Criticism that activates the mind and forces the audience to think, not tells them what to think. I want a more informed viewer. I don't want, like, if someone like watches my review of Rise of Skywalker and they go, yeah, I hate it too. It's like, oh, I don't care. I want you to think more critically about the content and media you consume. That's my goal. That's what I want. And I think those nuanced conversations with multiple, varying perspectives, that's when the internet is at its best.
So I think it's tough to talk about, like, because criticism online it's everywhere. We're in a very cynical society, and the internet gives everyone the opportunity to unleash their inner jerk, because they can hide behind an avatar and a username, and there's no consequences to being mean to people on the internet. And so you just see a lot of negativity. And I agree, there is a lot of mob mentality where literally you'll see it on Reddit all the time. Some person posted a painting that they're really proud of. They spent 16 hours on it, but because one dude went in there and downvoted it, everyone else is just like, oh, that one person didn't like it, so they know something I didn't, and let's just spam downvotes now, because let's just do that. And I don't think people really think about how much that can hurt the creator and the people behind that. And it's weird, especially with film, people just never seem to understand that you're talking about human beings who were doing their best. Or honestly, the thing that bugs me a lot on film criticism on YouTube is low-hanging fruit. It's this studio movie that was put together in 3 months without they didn't even have a script when they started shooting. Of course it's a mess. We're not gonna who's really surprised that Mulan was not the big smash masterpiece, but you're going to see 10 million videos, why Mulan was terrible. And it's I feel it's a waste of time. I just do. It's we don't need to dissect why this was terrible, we all kind of knew. But it is funny though, because same for me, my most popular video is my Game of Thrones video, where I absolutely tear apart the final season. And so there is that part of you, there's that voice in your head that's should I just keep doing that? But honestly, I set a rule for myself, because so I don't know, there's a channel that I think a lot of us video essayists just kind of have a problem with. I'm just gonna say it. If it starts beef, sorry. I think they're more than successful enough. I care what I think. But CinemaSins is a channel that really bothered me a lot, because it's not even criticism. They're just making bad jokes. But then you look at the comments and it's really depressing. How many people are thanks, I'm not going to watch this movie now. And I'm this is what made you not want to sit down and give this movie a chance? This guy being a 5-year-old sense of humor and just, and I don't know. And even channels that I liked, Your Movie Sucks, I think he's great at what he does. But I thought there was so much of that I set a rule that I was never going to be negative, and I broke it because Game of Thrones broke my heart, and I had no choice. Gloves were off. I was just I was a fan of one. Sorry, what were you saying?
If I can chime in, I kind of have a little rule that one, don't never get personal. I've been critical of filmmakers, but I really try to, make expense at the characters and the story, not the people behind it. Leave it that be. And also but I kind of also, weighing that out. If I'm going to make a critical video, don't be so harsh, be relaxed, be fun. I'm actually more serious with my positive videos than I am with my negative ones. But also balance it out. If you're going to do critical videos, that's great. That's fine. Just make sure you have positive videos to balance it out. No one likes too much positive, just so that you don't like too much of negative. And so that's actually the fun of it, is like, I just did a video, it's like pretty negative. All right, let's do a big praise video. You know, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Can I also chime in again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. So, to add on to both of what they were said with the film criticism, while they're way more acquainted with it, yeah, CinemaSins, I think, and I'm gonna shoot from the hip here. No, CinemaSins, CinemaSins has hurt film criticism and the way we see film so like harshly. I think it's worse than you say and what we all think, but because the systems on YouTube facilitate that. Like now, CinemaSins is like a contemptuous asshole. You could see that in the Bob Vids video, if you've ever seen that, about just deconstructing CinemaSins. But even then, outside of people like CinemaSins and people who make content with a more innocuous intention, who are just like, I want to make something I'm passionate about, whether or not it's positive or negative, content becomes distilled because of the systems. Like people go into a person's work, especially if they aren't subscribed or and not familiar with that person, and they'll be immediately like guns drawn at you, like no matter what, they won't open their mind. It's either they like it or dislike it, or they'll leave like a bad comment, or like in my case, somebody will just like type a meme in the comments and then leave my video after a second. But even then, that's better than the negativity. But
any engagement is good engagement.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Thanks.
You know.
Right, and it's I think it's that engagement that also allows the negativity to thrive. Now I'll stop talking.
No, this is okay. To kind of finish the talk, but still stay in the negative zone. It's a two-part question, but I want to kind of ask you about the future of the medium. But it's a two-part question because let's start with the part that I think everyone agrees it sucks, namely how the platforms are the various patrons, from Patreon to YouTube to Twitch to whatever else is going to come out of some social media layer. How do you think the future of the medium is going to develop with how YouTube and all of these platforms that sort of facilitate, but also kind of hold creators hostage? How do you feel this medium is going to develop over the years? Is it even possible to predict? Or is YouTube going to spring something on you guys in like a month or two?
I mean, I think the only like safe prediction to make is that it's definitely going to change, and I think it's going to continue to expand. Because I think, I mean, so I'm like just old enough to kind of be the last generation that was really being raised without social media and without, you know, like the idea of being a YouTuber was not a thing when I was even in high school. You know, like thinking about going off to college, that was not a thing I could have written down as an aspiration and make any sense. And so I think as it's continued to grow as a proper industry that is now being legitimized alongside TV, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that it was still like the YouTube celebrity versus the actual celebrity. And now that line just keeps getting blurred more and more. And so I think what we're already seeing is really indicative of what we're going to see in the future, which is more blending with traditional mainstream forms of entertainment and these new social platforms. I mean, because you have people like Will Smith and Jack Black on YouTube, and, you know, people like Drake and T-Pain playing on Twitch. And like, you know, I think we're going to continue to see more of that. And I think video essay, honestly, the strange thing, it's already, I feel like, happening now. The term's just going to kind of not make any sense after a while, because it's going to apply to so many different types of videos that I think we're going to have to come up with a whole new term set to explain, you know, to like put Vox and Nakey Jakey in their own separate categories where they belong. Like you wouldn't necessarily recommend, like there would be, you know, crossover between fans of both channels. I happen to be a fan of both, but you know what I mean? It's like that comparison isn't immediately clear. And I think as we're going to keep going further, and I mean, who knows, like it depends on what sort of features YouTube starts to add. Like, will people be able to edit videos after they've gone live? That could change things dramatically. But really what I think we're going to see is just a wider spectrum, because you're going to see like these bigger sort of corporate things coming in, like these think tanks with journalists and editors and, you know, really talented people. And I mean, they're already propping up all over the place, like these different companies that then start making content for Facebook, for YouTube, for Twitch. But you're always going to have the little guy too. And honestly, that's the stuff that I'm most excited about, because I feel like whenever you follow like the traditional media stuff, they kind of go after what like the regular Joes are trend setting. You know, like you have a guy like Casey Neistat come out and then everybody wants to be Casey Neistat, even Will Smith. And it's like, you know, I think we're always going to be looking at those like homegrown creators for the most inspiration, and like for where we can really see what the medium has potential for. And yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see too, because I know I'm already experimenting with it, and I know other people are like doing more of the cross-platform stuff. Like I've done a little bit of Twitch streaming, nothing related to video essays, but just as like a, hey, why not? I play video games. I'll stream sometime, see what happens, see if anyone wants to hang out and play some games with me. And I think we're going to see more of that. And that's just going to be interesting, because I mean, I couldn't imagine, you know, someone like Stanley Kubrick having a Snapchat, but you never know. And we're going to see what that looks like in this generation, like what the brilliant minds of the, you know, filmmaking world are going to be. They're going to have had Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts and YouTube accounts. And for all we know, the future genius filmmakers are obsessively watching video essays right now. And, you know, I think as far as predicting, it's going to be like the internet, anything, you know, it could go a million different directions, but it's going to be bigger. And unless we see like legitimate apocalypse happen, that just renders all of these predictions useless, I think we're going to see a lot of growth for the video essay community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like really that's it. Like the only thing you can predict is that it's going to evolve, hopefully mature. I definitely think longer is the future. I think the idea of the short form video essay, like unless you're someone like Captain Christian who just goes all out on the graphics, I really don't see short form video essays having much place anymore. Like as a creator, it's like you don't evolve it, you survive. So much of being online is just surviving, and you change to match that. Like for instance, edits I used to make like 2 years ago in terms of music, I used to edit to film scores, but recently with the copyright system, it's gotten brutal. So I can't. I've sworn that off indefinitely. But also, like in terms of like the types of content, the types of video essays, I really think we've found a few creators who have breached past the sort of like, could you consider this a feature film? And the fact that it's just on a streaming platform like YouTube, it doesn't count, but it could easily pass on any other like professional service. Like for instance, the previous week I was watching a bunch of documentaries through TIFF, and the best documentary I saw that week was Danielson's video essay on the flat Earth, and that was on flat Earth myths and all that. And that, like, I would recommend that video to everyone. And it was the most captivating sort of documentary story I saw that week, and it was something I watched on YouTube. So I think, like, you know, I think those it's not that they're merging; they're merged. It's happened. We're just kind of picking it apart now.
Yeah, absolutely. The singularity has already happened. Well, not that, but certainly the gap between what we considered like content that we would watch on TV. I'm old enough to be able to witness like YouTube from the start to now. So back then it was about intimate content, and then it became when things like prosumer equipment, like better cameras and stuff, became cheaper on phones, or like the Adobe suite being like a subscription-based thing is hugely influential to that. The more we wanted to emulate what we were watching on TV, the more we started to kind of go past it in a lot of ways, to the point where in the future, it is harder to predict for video essays. And I think you guys touched on that perfectly. I don't know what to add to that. But in terms of just content in general, we're going to see online completely take it over, and these systems and YouTube and cross platforms and all these places are going to facilitate content that's far surpasses the scale of what we can even predict right now. Like with everything going on with COVID-19, we see films being released online, but eventually I think we're going to see some type of platform that facilitates filmmaking and films in a much different way, or in a way similar to YouTube, where films are going to fundamentally change because of that. I can't speak much to that, but it certainly looks like as content and YouTube videos become more higher production, or as long as like something like TV shows, it's just going to become a little bit harder for video essays that are more bite-sized to be viable, and that's fine, because eventually that growth and those growing pains, we're going to learn to work with that scale and that pacing, and eventually it's just going to completely blow out the quality of the content before, and that's going to be amazing. We're going to be able to see people solo, just with cameras and editing, being able to do things that we never thought only one person could do, just with how accessible it all is. It's pretty much all about the accessibility going forward. Yeah.
Okay. I got info that we kind of have to wind up, but at least the second part of the question kind of answered itself. So we have questions from the audience. I think two? We have two questions. Okay, let's start off. So if you had to recommend one channel that made a particular impact on you lately, what would it be?
Well, so there's a go-to channel I always recommend to everybody. He's a buddy of mine, but I also think he's like the most talented video essayist out there. His name's Will Scoder, and he just released like these unbelievable videos he spent the last 2 years working on, which is like the most ambitious thing I've seen a YouTuber do, like just disappear to work on this big project. Like, it's unheard of, but it's all about happiness and just like the philosophy and the work that goes into finding happiness. And they're very informative, super high quality. It looks like it took a team of 50 people to make it, but he did it all by himself, and it's like the best thing I've ever seen on YouTube. So I would recommend that. Scoder is spelled Schoder. Will Scoder.
I was just looking through my subscription feed. I couldn't figure out. I don't know. I haven't discovered anyone like recently that was like, wow. I haven't found a recent creator that really like challenged that. But for me, it's been like more studying things outside of YouTube and studying things like photography. Honestly, the biggest inspirations and influences for me recently have been like trying to read more political books and trying to get more into what's happening now. I used to think of the world as like, there's like the politics, the stuff, and there's media. But the more I've worked and done research and realizing just how singular they are, and it's been like following the recent activism as of lately. There hasn't been a creator that's inspired me, and I think that's good for me, that I'm not like, I've kind of gone past the idea of having idols, but more just having a whole variety of people and letting them all influence you. And that way, you're not ripping anyone off.
Yeah, for somebody lately, that's also hard. I was trying not to tab over to like my subscriptions. I also don't. I try not to have inspirations as well, because it keeps me fresh. Because I am very impressionable when it comes to content. It's like, yeah, I want to do that, but it's like, no, stop, don't do that. But for people, and these aren't video essayists, two channels very quickly. Better Than Food, he's a book reviewer and sometimes he does film reviews, but he is just in front of a camera and he's talking candidly, but it's his cadence and the way he presents himself is just, he's very charismatic, but it's got a weird positive aura to it, and it's really great. And then Deep Focus Lens, who is a film reviewer, who just sits on her floor and talks about the movie and other topics, and it's just very intimate. Both of them are very intimate, and I think it's a nice palate refresher from the rest of YouTube. It's just people in front of a camera, and that's kind of what inspired me lately, especially with making more videos with just my face rather than just video essays.
Okay, and question number 2. Okay, that's a cynical one. Can you make a living from doing this?
It's definitely possible. My suggestion: don't move to an expensive city like I did. It's wherever you can stretch that dollar. I've got a friend who lives in Portugal who's crushing it, but then, you know, my buddy's in LA, little different story. And but yeah, it's definitely possible. I think the most important thing, and what I had in my mind when I started even, was you can't think about it like it has to be this or this was all a waste of time, because you never know what's going to happen. I feel like I got lucky. I got in like pretty early. I started making video essays in like 2015. I mean, before most people on the internet even knew what that was. So like I got lucky, and I have no thing about that. But if that hadn't worked out, I still picked up all these skills with After Effects, Photoshop, Premiere, and I've been able to get a decent amount of freelance work as a result of that. And it's obviously not like the same thing, but the notion and the idea being that, like, if you're really passionate about something, you can make it work for you. And maybe you don't make that directly, but unless you're like napping professionally, like there's a job out there that you can use those skills to make money. And video essays teach you a lot of like people don't really think about it, but it's like behind everything you see on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, every video has an editor, a sound person, you know, the person who's like uploading it to the social media, and that could be you. And you've got to get started somewhere. But like building a portfolio, doing video essays is certainly how I figured it out. I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree. So I would say it's definitely a way that you could find a way into a living.
Yes, but there's a lot of caveats there. It's one of those, I remember, I think it was actually Casey Neistat who said this, like with YouTube, is that in today's modern society, there is no end goal. Like if, let's say, for instance, I'm a video essayist and I'm covering film, like, you know, big movies and directors, you'd think the end point there is I am studying the craft of this stuff that I want to get to become a big name director, right? But that doesn't have to be your path. And, you know, is like, I think any logical person, like getting to the video essay, that could be step 1 or that could be step 10. There are people who have tried to make their way into the film industry, went to YouTube, or the people that started their, you know, job in the film industry by starting with YouTube. There really is no set path anymore. And the most important thing is, like, regardless of you make money, you don't make money, like Daniel said, the best thing you could do is learn skills and apply it. And, you know, I've gotten some gigs through that. And honestly, I'm starting to look more and more at that, especially recently. And yeah, like really that, you know, like people change careers how many times now? Like once every like 7 years or so. That's just a common thing. So even if you do make it, and that's a big if, that's not the end of the line. And you have more hurdles to go over, more things to do. So think of it not as an end point, but like as a stepping stone or something else.
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective, no. For video essays, for them, like, yes, for film video essays, there's a good chance you could. Not a good chance, but there's a chance. For me, and like they said, it was about building those skills. I wanted to be a video editor as an occupation, from the start of my life almost. And video essays and the challenge of making something aesthetically flow and learning storytelling through software and the way you write things, invaluable skills, not just in video making, but because of my channel, I was able to land like a good position as a video editor for a marketing company because I talked about this funny meme and why it's good. Like, it's such a weird translation, but nobody thinks about that long-term the long-term benefits of that. People are like, oh, maybe I'll become famous and make money on the internet. It's like, no, the things in between that are what's really important. You learn so much from making video essays about yourself, the skills, your limits especially. I mean, I'm nowhere near as big as the other two on here, but certainly like even the audience I've had and the luck I've had, I'm extremely fortunate as a person to grow through that. And I think that's where your head should be in when you make content. It's not to make money or make it your job. It should be tertiary, if anything, not even like a priority. It should just be about what you put into it and what you think you'll get back from it other than money. So.
Okay, so with those motivational words and words of encouragement, or discouragement for some perhaps, we'll have to finish up. Thank you guys very much for joining us. It was been an informative talk. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Nick. Please follow these guys on YouTube. They have cool stuff. And please follow the rest of our Ars Independent Festival days. We still have 2 days of content for all of you. Thank you guys again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I to by było na tyle z naszej rozmowy. Dziękuję za uwagę. Mam nadzieję, że czego się Państwo, wy, widzowie Arsa, dowiedzieli z tego wszystkiego. Mam nadzieję, że zachęci Was to do śledzenia YouTube'a, nie tylko naszych twórców, których zaprosiliśmy, ale również innych. I ponawiam zaproszenie na pozostałe eventy Ars Independent. Dziękuję, do widzenia, dobranoc.